We are here with Colin Cieszynski, Chief Market Strategist at SIA Wealth Management. Here he is now, and we're going to continue our conversation. And we know the big banks are coming out with earnings this week to kick things off. You've noticed a couple things with some earnings that have been trickling out already. Walgreens, Delta, and Aritzia as well. They all came out with pretty good numbers, and they moved up in a down market. So what is that telling you?
That's really encouraging to me as we head into earnings season. Two things. First of all, is that confession season in terms of profit warnings has been pretty quiet so far, and that's always a good thing. That suggests that most managements are thinking that they can hit their forecasts and their guidance. But Friday really intrigued me because we had a big sell-off in the markets, and yet three companies that put out earnings went up, and the Walgreens was explosive. It went up about 20%, as did Aritzia in Canada. Aritzia we do hold in some of the portfolios that we manage, and also Delta Airlines. And I looked at these and I thought, well, what is the most notable thing about these companies, or is there anything in common? And the one thing that was most in common is they're more domestically focused, or focused in North America. And so that could be interesting, because that's a theme we've been looking at going forward with tariffs, with the rising U.S. dollar, with the Trump administration focus on getting the domestic economy going. And then we have three North American focused companies doing extremely well on earnings. So that seems to be a positive sign.
So big banks will kick things off this week, including J.P. Morgan. What are you generally expecting from the financials in terms of earnings?
I think we'll see some fairly positive numbers. We did have we had a pretty good stock market during the quarter, so that would help the capital market side and asset management sides of the business. And based on what the Fed was saying about cutting back on their rate cuts, suggests that the underlying economy and underlying business conditions have been pretty good as well. And of course, the banks have, as in Canada, have a finger in every pie, so a piece of everything. So they're pretty sensitive to the overall economy, and the overall economy seems to be doing well.
Now, the narrative seems to be that banks should benefit from deregulation in the United States under a Trump administration. Would you agree with that, in terms of, say, more M&A being allowed, maybe?
Definitely a possibility, and certainly to get the gears of business running faster certainly helps the financials.
Now, I just wanted to point something out here about the National Federation of Independent Business. So in November, had its biggest jump ever. And we know that well more than 90% of the businesses in the U.S. are small businesses. And so there was a lot of enthusiasm after the election. You got the recent numbers now, and those that expect better business conditions, it's the highest since 2002. The uncertainty index, largest back-to-back drop in a couple of back-to-back months. So what is your take on, you're talking about domestic businesses, what's your take on what seems to be a very enthusiastic small business sentiment?
That's great news. I mean, that's good for the economy. It's good for employment as well. And we've seen that with the stronger than expected non-farm payrolls that came out last week. But it's encouraging that people saying like they want to do business, they want to go forward, they want to, and that's a good sign. It's better to have people optimistic than pessimistic.
Anything else you're thinking about in terms of earnings this week and throughout the season?
As we move forward, the one that I'm now starting to keep an eye on is we talked a lot about the domestic economy, is what happens with the multinationals. And the reason I say that is because the multinationals are potentially more exposed to any kind of political differences, tariffs, anything like that, any kind of trade wars that pop up, sanctions, all those sorts of things. But the other one is the U.S. dollar has been going up a lot. We've seen rates go up, but we've also seen the dollar go up. And that's a headwind for multinationals in two ways. If you're an exporter, it makes your goods more expensive in other countries. But also, if you have operations around the world, when those results get translated back to the U.S., because the dollar's stronger, they're less in terms of U.S. dollars, and that could over time be a problem for multinationals. Now, maybe not this quarter, but if the U.S. dollar continues to ramp up, that could be a problem in the quarters ahead.